Okay, I have to go on a quick anti-communist rant because I was just sitting in on a university class where all they were doing was singing the praises of communism. And let me just quickly say that communism fucking sucks. It has never produced anything I wouldn't say anything, but it mostly produces more disenfranchisement, murder, theft, and destruction than capitalism does and has done. And you can take things back. One second, let me close Discord. Am I talking on Discord? Okay. You can say that, like, before we were industrialized and we were going into all sorts of wars for territory and stuff, you can call that capitalism, but I really don't think that is really a fair way to use that, a fair way to categorize capitalism or to categorize those time periods as being capitalistic, because they were looking for more resources, which is at the core of capitalism, but it's also at the core of any sort of civilization. So, not relevant. Basically, they were talking about how awesome communism was and how terrible capitalism was, and that capitalism has killed more people than communism, which is absolutely ridiculous. Then I responded by saying, communism has killed millions and millions of people, probably more than capitalism. And one of the students responded something like, well, that's just Mao and Stalin. Which is disturbing, because there's Mao, there's Stalin, there's Cambodia, and there's North Korea at the very least, and so many more that I can't just pull off the top of my head. And so when I said, you're forgetting these other countries, she said, North Korea is not communist. What are you even saying? So this basically demonstrates to me how little awareness of history people that are fans of communism have. That this person was such a staunch defender of communism. She made concessions for Mao, saying, well, even though Mao killed millions of people, you have to look at it, and she used the words think critically, so condescendingly. You have to think critically and think about where China was at that point. They had just emerged from World War II, and they had been basically, I would say genocided, but they'd been at war with Japan, who was, doing Japan World War II things to them. But here she makes the concession. It says, and so it was okay that Mao put people, he gave them hope, were the words. She said exactly. He gave them hope. Okay, make the same argument for Trump then, if you're going to use that argument. Terrible argument. Anyone who gives anyone hope is their sins are absolved. It's like ridiculous. So Mao killed millions of people, put a bunch of people in re-education camps, killed all the educated people, all the religious people, destroyed religion as a whole, destroyed every institution that could in any way pose a threat to his communist regime. That's millions of people, and the echoes are still there now, where you can't be free in China. You're constantly being watched. You're forced to be effectively like you are only a pawn of the government in China. You have no freedom. And you stand on the mountains and mountains of bodies of people who died before you. It's ridiculous. And so I brought up North Korea, and she goes, North Korea isn't communist. Literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. North Korea, where they refer to themselves as revolutionaries, where they use the word we instead of the word I, where literally everything is for the country, where private business is illegal, that's not communism. Where they had a war to separate and ended up separating from South Korea because of the clash between communism and capitalism. That's not communism. What the fuck are you talking about? Jesus. All this is not to say that capitalism doesn't have its flaws. Of course it does. But I think it's evident that capitalism produces a lot more wealth and a lot more well-being for people around the world, let's say within the last 100 years, than communism has. I think that's super obvious. And there have been no genocides. You could say the people that live on land where resources are trying to be extracted have been displaced in the name of capitalism, yes. And environments have been destroyed in the name of capitalism, yes. But the same thing would happen under communism. It's not as if those things wouldn't happen under communism. It's just that under communism, instead of the incentive being profit, the incentive would be so-called liberating or uplifting the proletariat, which is also just, it's bullshit. Conceptually, communism, if you ignore all of the realities of what it is to be a human, then maybe it makes sense. but you have to ignore all the realities of what it is to be a human, what it is to be a person. It's ridiculous that there is even. I think it's painful to me that there is a common idea among people my younger sister's age that communism is somehow better than capitalism. When it has never been demonstrated, the people who are so in love with it demonstrate no knowledge of how communism has manifested over the last 100 years and completely ignore things like incentives. And seem to be totally okay with the idea that, well, if people don't want to do stuff, you get to force them to do stuff. They seem to be okay with that. Yeah, that's fine. But it's only fine when a communist does it. So to force people into re-education camps and to force them to do labor that they would otherwise choose to do for money under capitalism, it's okay to force them to do it because it's communism. If a Nazi said they were going to force people to do things, it's immediately wrong. But a communist forcing people to do things, it's fine. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. They're equally fucked up. They're equally fucked up. Neither of them is right. Capitalism, so far, is the best system we have. Obviously mixed in with socialist elements so that people don't just die when they hit the bottom of the hierarchy. But capitalism, so far, is the only thing that has worked. So that's my rant. That's my little anti-communist rant. I think that communism fucking sucks. I think that it's a terrible idea. I think that even on paper, it ignores so much and just doesn't work. And to be a communist, which I have been in the past, you have to be very, very naive or very, very okay with the idea that you're going to kill people in order to get your goal, which is either entirely naive or actually just a power grab. I think communism is a place where people who feel like they will not succeed under capitalism, in their imaginary fairy tale land of a perfect communist society, they can actually succeed because nothing is expected of them. Except that's where the issue is, because in communism, everything is expected of you. The ideal is that you don't have to work, everything just happens automatically. No one has to farm. No one has to produce the minerals that go into your electronics. No one has to maintain the infrastructure. It all just happens on its own, and you just get to live and make art all day. As if everybody would want to make art. Which is, who's going to do that work? You are going to have to create an underclass of people who are forced laborers to provide all the infrastructure that capitalism provides through willing participation. And people who are big fans of communism are okay with that. They're fine with that. Because they think it's not going to be them. The entire thing is based on a delusion that it's not going to be me. I'm not going to be the one in the gulag. It is going to be you. You have an education? Go to gulag. That's it. That's simple. You have any semblance of religion? Go to gulag. You have a quarrel with your neighbor? Go to gulag. Literally anything. You go to gulag. That's how communism works. You are in Cambodia and China. You're educated, death. You were in any way associated with any sort of free enterprise, death. What the fuck? How is this still supported? This idea that the system that we live in right now is so totally corrupt and bullshit that we should just destroy it. Ridiculous. I think the people that hold it because it's easier to say destroy it than it is to participate in it, do well enough that you can make a change. I think that it's an ideology for people who feel like failures or feel like they will fail if they actually try because they're lacking something. They're not smart enough, they're not pretty enough, they're not well connected enough, they don't have enough money to begin with, they come from a place of poverty. Therefore, they cannot possibly succeed under capitalism. So communism. Without thinking one step further and going, you'd be in the same place in communism. Probably be worse. So that's my capitalism, communism rant.